I want to bite your finger. It's a Dracula game. Just set the clock. Just try your luck.
If Dracula's cape opens, you have to put your finger in his mouth and press the lever. If he leaves a mark on your finger, you have to start over again.
He didn't bite me!
If you can sneak all the way around Dracula's house, you'll win the game.
You're not supposed to bite people.
It's a Dracula game.
I want to bite your finger from Hasbro.
Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to the review of the Peren Nera, a watch that does indeed want to bite your finger. Memory is a funny thing. I can't remember the 1990s, an entire decade lost in the fog, and yet I remember every single TV advert that I watched in the 1980s. The Thunderstorm, Vampire Watch. And yet I remember every advert that I watched in the 1980s, the fertile mind of a child indeed. But I digress, back to the Peren. Now it may say Swiss made on the dial, but the Peren's heart belongs to Transylvania. Indeed, the company logo, as featured on the dial and the crown, is a big pair of vampire fangs. I've got high hopes for this one. Let's flip the camera and see how it gets on. So, Peren from Transylvania then. I don't know much about Transylvania other than what I could garn from a very brief look at the first page of Wikipedia. It refers to an area of land in current Romania, Transylvania meaning beyond the woods. It was made famous by Bram Stoker in his classic gothic horror novel Dracula. It was Dracula's home base before he moved to England to try and suck some blood there. And Peren have clearly run with that theme right from the outer packaging. You can see the vampire fangs there. Peren itself meaning perennial, everlasting, never dying. Much like old Dracula. Now, they've taken it a little bit too far in my opinion. Peren is a brand which does not have a beginning nor an end, for it was not invented nor was it conceived. I don't think Mr. Stoker wrote that. Anyway, Transylvania, a little more Transylvanian packaging here, and finally we get onto the watch, and I think it is really, really interesting, this one. Now, Peren refer to this Nera as retro modern, and they cite inspiration from a 1960s dive watch. You can see the photo there from Peren's own webpage comparing the two watches side by side, as it were. Now I don't disagree with them. You know, if that's what they're saying, who am I to suggest otherwise? But I think this is a really clean, modern design, and I like it a lot. I really do think it's a breath of fresh air when compared to the kind of formulaic Submariner homages and kind of generic dive watches that are prevalent at this price. And what is the price? Well, these are coming in at around $440 US, which for something with design characteristics like this, with Swiss made on the dial and with an ETA 2824 in the back, I don't think that's a bad price at all. 39mm in diameter. This one is just over 14mm thick. Lug tip to lug tip is 48.5, although drilled lugs today, bringing that inboard a couple of mil either side, so it wears very nicely indeed, effectively a little bit shorter than 48.5. 20mm lug width, and on the supplied leather strap, this one weighs in at bang on 90 grams, though I must admit, I have not been wearing it on the supplied leather strap. I swapped it out pretty much straight away for one of my own leather straps. I ordered a couple of sailcloth straps for this one. I think sailcloth would be just about perfect for this. I've got a slightly, they didn't arrive on time for the review unfortunately. I've got a slightly ill-fitting sailcloth that I will attempt to show you later on and explain my reasoning. I think the textures on the case itself would go beautifully with sailcloth. So 316L stainless steel, case, crown and bezel, but a number of different finishes here. We've got a kind of PVD bead blasted effect on the side of the case and the crown as well. We've got a darker PVD coating on this bezel, and we've got a kind of brushed smooth bezel on the outer there. Very nice indeed. That's where I think this kind of modern design aesthetic that I was referring to comes from. This nice mixture of brushed and coated finishes. We've got a piece of domed sapphire crystal, very nicely domed there with some AR coating on the underside. And the dial, as you can see, it's not black. It's a kind of dark blue, almost like a kind of blue-black in colour. Apparently that blue-black colour inspired by the Devil's Lake near the Nera Gorges, an area of Transylvania, near Romania. There are another couple of details on the dial I'll show you when we zoom in, apparently inspired by the local terrain as well. So clearly a lot of thought has gone into this one, a lot of devil in the detail, so to speak. So there's a look at some of those different finishes, including the fangs on the crown as noted in the intro. Very nice little crown, very easy to operate, I think. Just about the right size and dimensions for the overall case, and nice and easy to grip if you do want to adjust the time or hand wind the movement. Very simple but very legible fence post hands and a big arrowhead on the second hand there. And perhaps you noticed the recesses, the hour markers are cut into the chapter ring. Again, this is referring to the caves at Nera Gorge apparently. So some nice little touches as noted in the design of this one. Minute track all the way around the outside as well. But just a printed dial, very clean and crisp with Peren Transylvania, the fangs again, and automatic limited edition, for these are all limited editions just above the 6. And those all important words, Swiss made, very cheekily printed down there either side of the 6 o'clock index. Should also be noted that this one is available with a black date wheel if you want the date to be not quite so legible but a little cleaner and a little more in keeping with the blue-black design of the dial. You can spec that one with a black date wheel with white Arabics on top. And I gave you a sneak peek earlier on, but there is an ETA 2824 beating away in the back of this one. Screw down crown, 200 meters of water resistance, screw down case back, and a Swiss movement, Swiss made on the dial as noted. So 25 joules for these ones, about 42 hour power reserve. They obviously hack hand wind, 28,800 vibrations per hour, leading to a very smooth 8 ticks per second smooth sweep of the second hand. They are fairly robust, they are fairly reliable, generally known as the workhorse, the entry level Swiss movement. Now I'll put up a timing chart here. This one has been spinning away in the boxy winders for 10 days or so. Very consistent, but also a little bit fast, coming in at around the plus 15, at or around the plus 15 there. So do note that these aren't necessarily any more accurate than a Japanese movement in a watch at the $400 mark, and they're going to cost you a few more dollars when the time comes to service them. But if you want Swiss made on the dial, then these are the way to go. And there it is on wrist. I think it looks great. Properly chunky little thing, but very nice, clean and modern design in my opinion. Doesn't look like anything else that I've reviewed on the channel so far either. So this is the original strap that, as noted, I haven't been wearing very much. Haven't been wearing because I think they've overbuckled it. Giant Panerai style buckle, almost as wide as the watch itself. I think that is a little overdone. I don't mind the colour combination. I think that those kind of warm honey brown tones look quite nice with that blue black dial and the various coated finishes. I just think that buckle is a little bit too big. It'll catch on your shirt cuff as well, but no shortage of options in 20mm lug width if you want to swap it out, and drilled lugs to boot, making it nice and easy. Looks good outside as well. That blue dial, the Devil's Lake blue, looking more prominent in natural sunlight than it did under my studio lighting. Again, just adding another little colour tone to the watch, combined with those different finishes, different surfaces, and the creamy honey-toned leather strap. So well spec'd, well priced, well made, well built, and with a clean and original modern design, all looking pretty good for the Peren then. Well, not so much a moans and niggles section today. I think though there are a number of areas that could make this watch go from good to great, if there ever is indeed a Nera Mark II. And I'll tell you what those are, in my humble opinion of course. They could probably make it about 2mm thinner. There seems to be a lot of space behind that movement. I'm not quite sure why you would use an ETA 2824 and then have it at 14+mm. They could shave 2mm off that easily, which would make it still just as chunky but sit a little flatter on the wrist. And as noted, I'd be doing something a little bit different in terms of the strap. This is a sailcloth, not quite the right size. I have been shoehorning this one into a 19mm watch, but I think this is a better look. Adds another textural element, but keeps it clean and modern, nice and complementary, I think, with the other textures and finishes used on the watch. And you can actually get it wet. I'm always a little bit dubious about dive watches on leather straps, this one would mean it was practical as well as attractive. And then there's the bezel. It rotates, but I'm not quite sure why. I mean, what are you actually going to time with that? It is almost illegible. I mean, unless you're fluent in Braille, then you're never going to know what time it is or what time it was or what time you were timing. Fix the bezel. Fix the bezel. Take the money that you had spent on the bezel action and put it elsewhere in the watch. I think the design is great. I am not bothered at all about the fact that this would not have a rotating bezel. If you're going to delete that, it seems to be kind of neither fish nor fowl at the moment. A bezel that rotates but you can't actually read it, so just delete it and put the money elsewhere in the watch. And then there's the lume. BGW9 and not an awful lot of it. Dracula's watch, come on man, it's got to have fantastic lume, or better still, red tritium tubes. How crushingly cool would this watch be if those hands had big, long, red tritium tubes, possibly with little red dots on those indices as well? I think it would look sensational. So I'm not trying to beat up on the Peren Nera. I think it is a very interesting and mostly successful attempt to do something different. I really do like the design. It's very legible. Price, value, specs, Swiss made, great movement choice, etc, etc. I just think that with a couple of tweaks here and there, this one could be an absolute killer. So there you have it, the Peren Nera. I think that every one of you should go out and buy one of these watches, so that they then go on to make the Peren Nera Mark II. There's a lot of potential in this watch. I think with a few tweaks, they could be a really, really interesting and very well priced, unusual offering on their hands. How many other watches do you know inspired by Transylvania? They call it neo-vintage. I think this one is very modern indeed in its styling. Love those case finishes. Just a couple of tweaks, it'd be a cracker. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.